And here are your hosts, RJ Young and Brandon Drum.
What's up, kid folks? It's RJ Young. I am back with Brandon Drum for another episode of Young and Drum where, you know what? To hell with it. Hey, Brandon, who's going to start quarterback 2019 August 31st?
Ooh, well, so this is an interesting thing. It's either going to be Jaylen Hurts or, hey, you know what? I think Spencer Rattler has a better shot than people think because, and I say this because Oklahoma wants, and first off, this is an OUinsider.com. So if you're going to get all the rest of this information on OUinsider.com, so you need to come remember there. But
30 seconds out the gate with the promo.
Yeah, but I mean, I just want everybody to know I'm not going to give everything out here, but I am going to give you enough that it's going to entice you a little bit. Tease. Look, man, Oklahoma is going to take a transfer or attempt. Don't report and say he said they're going to take one 100%. They're going to attempt to take one either way. I mean, I talk to people, and if they don't get Jaylen Hurts, they are going to try to get, like a Brandon Wimbush or somebody else that's a grad transfer to at least alleviate, I guess be a stopgap for Spencer Rattler to come up because the writing's on the wall for Austin Kendall. You can see it. Everybody knows it. They obviously don't think that, he's going to be that guy for 2 or 3 years. Dude, am I crazy for saying that? Like, I'm not saying like he's not good.
I think you're
because I think he's really, really good.
No, I think you're crazy for saying that because as much as I was thumping that Kyler Murray was going to win the job like everybody else who knew anything about what was going on with the program and actually had seen Kyler Murray play football, especially in 2017. But I also believe Lincoln when he said, look, Austin Kendall has to take a lot away from knowing he was neck and neck with Kyler Murray for the starting job in August, and then post the bowl game in the Orange Bowl game in January, you have Lincoln Riley saying, no, Austin has to feel good about coming into the spring knowing that he was that close to the Heisman winner when we're talking about the job. And I think what a lot of folks forget, and you could check this out in a video that I uploaded on Thursday night, Austin Kendall was rated higher than Jaylen Hurts in the 2016 24/7 composite. Now, the dudes in front of him, you could take or leave them. Shane Buechele, right, at 11, and Dwayne Haskins, I think, was 8. Shea Patterson was 1, ended up transferring to Michigan. He's all right. He ain't Dwayne Haskins, but who is? And then you go up and down that 24/7 composite. Oregon took in 2 quarterbacks, Terry Wilson and Justin Herbert. We all know Justin Herbert would have probably been the first quarterback taken in the draft this year if he didn't choose to come back. And then Ian Book is also in that, and he was at 35 in the composite. I just think Austin Kendall has more than a shot to win the job, but I'm going to be the guy who is going to be somebody's hero listening to this podcast who says, Tanner Mordecai can spin it.
Yep.
And Tanner Mordecai is not trying to be a stopgap for anybody, but that's the dude I think is most likely to be the stopgap if he does not win the job this year because Spencer's behind him, and you had to know that. So if anybody was going to transfer following this June, I would actually think that, Austin Kendall leaving means Tanner Mordecai stays. Austin Kendall staying means Tanner Mordecai leaves, but he also might be married to the program because he was such a late get and such a late commit. And we all know that Cam Rising was the guy that they wanted. No matter how it figured out, Cam Rising was the guy they wanted. They ended up going with Mordecai. And Mordecai knows the score, right, in a way that Kendall does not. Kendall expected to be the guy, and then Baker showed up, and then Kyler showed up. So, if anything, I think...
And then Hurts showed up.
Right. Well, if Hurts shows up...
Yeah, well, he hasn't. I mean...
and we're talking about grad transfers, and the only other guy that we can think of right now is Brandon Wimbush. Because, Martell...
He's a viable guy.
Martell could get a hardship waiver because Urban Meyer retired. It'd be a hard one to get, but it's in play. But I also don't think that that's something that you might necessarily want to do if you're Lincoln Riley, especially if you got Jalen Hurts on the hook. It's not a smart play. And
Well,
folks can talk about how he fits in the scheme, but also I'm under this impression when we're talking about quarterbacks at Oklahoma right now. If Lincoln Riley says he wants this person to be the quarterback at Oklahoma, I want that person to be the quarterback at Oklahoma. I don't care if it's Monet Davis, okay? What that dude has done with quarterbacks has been nothing less of a superhero and extraordinary. So if it's Jaylen Hurts, fine. And I understand there's a lot of folks here that are listening to podcasts that don't think that Jaylen Hurts can throw the ball deep, or don't think that Jaylen Hurts can be an accurate passer, or think that he's some sort of running all right, I'm going to be this guy, and we might get there later in the podcast because I'm on this bent, and it's really starting to piss me off, Brandon. Why are some of these dudes being labeled as butchers rather than surgeons because they're in butcher systems? You know, I mean,
that's okay, dude. Straight, and I'm not trying to interrupt you, but I can flat out tell you, I talked to people tonight, and I can tell you that Oklahoma, Lincoln Riley specifically, thinks the world of Jaylen Hurts and his ability. Thinks the world of it. Thinks that he can come in and be that guy and can win a national title and compete and win the Heisman at Oklahoma. This came from people inside the program, bro. Like, they think that highly of him. They're sitting there laughing at some of the stuff that fans and people are saying about Jaylen Hurts. They think that he can be that guy at Oklahoma, and they want him bad, like to the point that they tried to get him on a visit this weekend, but he had already promised Mike Locksley that he would go there. And also, mind you, I've talked to people in Hurts camp, and they at one point didn't feel like Oklahoma really wanted him, but now they know and they can see it and feel it and sense it. So things are kind of starting to flip in Oklahoma's favor a little bit, but I don't know if it's to the point to where I would say that he's going to Oklahoma, because there's a lot of programs that are using the fact that Oklahoma lost 4 starters on offensive line and a lot of things that they're not guaranteed to be the starter because Austin Kendall's there, when in reality, if Hurts comes, they're probably going to let Austin Kendall go because he's already graduated. And that only makes sense. Like, dude, thank you. Let's find you a spot. Let's find you a Washington State. Let's find you a North Carolina, because they really need somebody out there, and that's where he's from. But I think a Washington State's a really good look for him. I think a Washington or a North Carolina is a really good look for him. I think trying to think of another place that needs a quarterback that just lost it. I mean, maybe a Notre Dame would be a good spot for him. I mean, places like that, they fit Austin Kendall's style, you know? And I don't know that where Lincoln Riley seems to be headed with this offense. I mean, Mordecai is more of a runner than Kendall. I mean, that's a given. If you watch Mordecai play, you know he's really athletic. And there's a reason why North Carolina, Georgia, LSU, Florida, all these schools, Miami, all these schools come offering him late in the game after he committed to Oklahoma, because they think really highly of him. He carried that Waco Midway program to the state finals, and he had no horses around him, no talent, and still was able to put up, I think, the most. He's like top 2 or 3 all time in playoff yards, touchdowns, and all that stuff in Texas high school football history. I mean, the guy is a baller as well. So, and to your point about Spencer Rattler, I mean, look, if Mordecai starts, that's why I think they would lean towards starting Rattler if Kendall decided he wants to transfer, or they just don't feel like Kendall's the guy. I don't know that you bring Mordecai in because you think Rattler is your future, right? So why would you play Mordecai? Say he wins 10 games. How do you knock him off the perch after you win 10 games at Oklahoma? Like, you know how hard that would be to do?
As hard as saying, hey, Kyler Murray, you can go play pro baseball over the spring and summer and then show up and enroll and get the keys back.
I mean, it's hard though, right? You have to take faith in that.
No,
but Kyler Murray's a different breed, man. Like,
I don't.
We're comparing apples and oranges a little bit there.
I don't think it's that far away, because what you're saying is, do I trust the kid? And in the case of saying that we're going to try to find you a spot to land, that's provided that Austin Kendall's checked out. And I'm not sure that the kid is, because if he's checked out, he would have checked out 2 years ago. He would have checked out.
No, I don't think he's checked out, but I think if Hurts comes in.
No, I'm saying that's what I'm saying. I don't think so. I don't think so, because he played behind 2 Heisman winners. And you know what? Those 2 dudes, from his standpoint, playing devil's advocate, they got lucky. They didn't blow a knee. They didn't go down with an ankle. You know, they didn't. They also were able to spend a year learning the offense.
I don't know. I know you're playing devil's advocate, but I'm just going off source information.
Well, and we're discussing.
Yeah,
we're discussing. We're not coming to the definitive, because fact is, Jaylen Hurts is still.
Yeah, we can't crystal ball. We don't have a crystal ball to see how it plays out.
But he's still enrolled at Alabama. He is taking visits. And one of the things that I keep trying to point out to people about the transfer portal is, what it does is make it more difficult on the kid once that information is made public, because now you have to walk around in the program with people saying, knowing you got to fit at the door if you want it. And I think that's what Tate Martell is doing more than Jaylen Hurts, is saying, you know what, I don't have to put up with this. I don't have to sit here and just take you bringing in these guys to compete with me when I was told that I was going to have an opportunity to win the job outright and not be brought in with this better competition, or even competition that's on par. What I'm saying is, if you are either one of these guys in the portal or not, what you want everybody to know is that you can do stuff too. And if a coach is going to bring in competition, you're going to say, okay, well, then you'll lose the competition that might make this guy better. And again, you're talking about Jaylen Hurts. I understand the experience, and I like Jaylen Hurts. I like him as a quarterback. I like that he's got a national title ring, and he'd have the only other one not named Cale Gundy, and Cale Gundy's is 18 years old and collecting dust. What I'm saying is, Austin Kendall would feel good, because Jaylen Hurts has to learn this offense on the fly. He has to learn it inside of 8 months, and he's not even here. Austin Kendall's been in this offense for 3 years. He sat behind 2 dudes that he knows are better than Jaylen Hurts. He's okay.
Right.
You know, I don't necessarily think that he's out the door just because Jaylen Hurts shows up. I think he's out the door if he wants to be out the door. And I think that, you know, as good as Jaylen Hurts is, he is susceptible to being injured as anybody else. As good as Tanner Mordecai could be, I don't think that Austin Kendall is intimidated by him. And I certainly don't think that you'd be missing on Spencer Rattler by starting Tanner Mordecai and winning 10 games. But more than that, you're going to have 4 quarterbacks on campus, no more, no less. That's what everybody wants. That's what everybody is going to have. I don't see this as a problem. I see this as something we get to talk about and get to have fun with in January, I guess is my whole point.
Yeah, no, the other aspect, and the reason why you bring in a grad transfer is because it really does help you with 2020.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, it helps you with the Bryce Young. I mean, I know we're saying a name that's everybody's like, wait, what? Bryce Young? Oh, okay, if you're on OUinsider.com, you know about Bryce Young. And you know the situation there and everything that's going on behind the scenes there a little bit. But yeah, I mean, they get a chance to get after him a little bit more. And with all the uncertainty and just the I guess, I'm trying to think without saying, just the shit storm, I guess, that you would have to call it. I mean, that's the only thing I can think to call it what's going on at USC, because it's a dumpster fire. I'm sorry, dumpster fire, because it's a dumpster fire. Am I right? I mean, they've gone through, God. I mean, I know that's kind of leading us into our next conversation, but
I'm not I am a profane person, but I try not to be profane in a public space, which is to say the term that I've used is Chinese fire drill, because
it is whatever it is. Because it's crap is what it is.
Because you don't know who's coming or going. You don't know what they have. You don't know how long they're going to have it. Like, okay, let me lay out some facts here. Cliff Kingsbury, well, let's start back. Clay Helton has an abysmal season with a terrible showing to a Notre Dame team that nobody believed in, and basically got in on the strength of a win over them when we know that USC wasn't very good. Then you tell Clay Helton,
Michigan,
you tell Clay Helton, blow up your staff, but you get to stay, which is something a lot of coaches won't do because loyalty matters in this business. But he did it. He blew up the staff, and he said, okay, I'm going to go get somebody. And Lynn Swann says, how about Cliff Kingsbury? And Clay Helton knows that he doesn't run any scheme like Cliff Kingsbury, and he's an offensive coach, but he hires Cliff Kingsbury after firing guys like T. Martin, who I always thought was an up-and-comer in the gig. But you have Cliff Kingsbury for all of a month before he leaves you for a better job, but was going to leave you, period, just using you as a stopgap. in the meantime, you don't have an offensive coordinator. You do have JT Daniels, who graduated early to get there. You bring in 2 5-stars that you got to keep happy, and Kyle Ford and Brew McCoy. And if you're on the board, you know how everybody feels about that. You also know that Bubba Bolden, who was an extremely highly regarded safety that got into trouble, got suspended, you thought was coming back to USC because he was reinstated, said, you know what, I don't really like the way that I was treated while I was here, so I'm going to transfer to Miami. All while Chris Steele saw what happened to Bubba Bolden and said, no way I can go to USC, and he lives down the street, right? Mm-hmm. And now you got your 2020 class in deep jeopardy because you don't have coordinators offensively that can say, this is what we're running and this is what we're going to do with you. Also, on top of this, the former number 1 recruit, I believe in the 2017 class, in Jalen Phillips, wants to go to USC after he said he was going to retire for health issues from UCLA. And this gets into the Roy Manning stuff. If you're on the board, you understand about how good he is at coaching linebackers, in particular outside linebackers. But it's just turned into a soap opera, and it's embarrassing because USC is one of the premier programs in the sport. And you just can't have this kind of stupidity, frankly, going on at this institution and have the sport look good, especially in a conference that, by the way, hired a PR crisis management firm to try to get the brand back to where it should be. It wasn't that long ago we were all talking about Larry Scott the way that we were talking about Mike Slive, and that he's one of the smartest commissioners in the game, and now he looks like St. Ignatius. He looks like the dude that's just walking down the street, throwing coins into the air, going, you know what, it's all funny money anyway. I just don't see how any of this is a good look for USC or the Pac-12. But also, I don't know if anybody's paying attention, but Lincoln Riley went into Modern Day, which is, again, down the street from USC, without a defensive coordinator, and walked out with defensive recruits. Walked out with a 4-star safety. And you know what? If Elias Ricks was on the board, he probably would have walked out with him in 2022 because you have a commit playing cornerback who carpools with the dude. The fact that they let this get this far out of hand with a guy that they had tapped and we all thought was a really good guy in Clay Helton is just all on Lynn Swann to me. How did you mess this up?
Yeah, no, he was an amazing sideline reporter back in the day, and that's kind of where I think he needs it.
I thought he was full of it. I couldn't stand Lynn Swann.
Oh, you didn't like him on the sideline either?
Nah, man. But I'm a hard dude to please when we're talking about sideline reporter too. I mean, it's a tough gig, but do it to the best. Show some hustle, show some effort. You know, I think that's the gig because you know it's a bad spot to be in. But if you're talking about sideline reporters, I mean, I also compare them to the folks that work in the NBA, and they're really good at their jobs. You know, Lisa Salter, she can go back and forth, but Doris Burke cut her teeth on dudes like Greg Popovich, made it work. You know, Craig Sager, legend, made it work. Yeah. I remember watching Lynn Swann and thinking, why are you yucking at me?
I guess. I mean, I guess he needs to just stay out of the limelight when it comes to football because he's not. As an administrator, he's awful. I mean, that's been proven time and time again. I feel like it's just been nothing but junk since he showed up at USC to be there in their athletic department, and they have yet to win with him there. I think ever since Pete Carroll left, that whole football program has been nothing but a whirlwind where they don't even know, you know, what to expect year after year because you think you know with USC because they have all this talent. They have everything going for them, and then they go out there and they drop a 6-6 or a 6-7 or whatever, and the next year they'll be 9-3, and everybody's like, "Oh, they're back." Well, guess what happens year after that? They're like 5-7. I mean, it's been awful, and that's USC. That's a blue blood. That's a program you look at and you go, they should win every year. They should be up there with the Ohio States, the Oklahomas, the Alabamas, the Georgias of the world every year, the now Clemsons, I guess you want to say. I don't even know if you can call Clemson a blue blood, but they've won 2 of the last 3, so they're getting there. So I mean, dude, they should be up there. That's our childhood. Think about the programs that they had, even when we were in college. That's the Matt Leinerts, the Dwayne Jarrett's,
Okay, all
the
right. Let me jump in there and say, childhood, no. College and high school into college, for me, yes. For you, I'm sure college because you're a bit older than me. But look,
yeah.
man, look,
It was high school and college
look,
for me.
man. They didn't get good until like 2003, and they were bad by 2007. You
Yeah,
know,
that's what I mean. Like,
and then like I don't that's not a long enough stretch for me to say that USC was
well,
back. Or I mean, they were great when Pete Carroll was there, but he was only there for so long when they were really good. I
I
just
mean, but I got to watch Keyshawn and all them. They were good back
nah,
then.
I
So
Keyshawn was good. Tell me who the
yeah, but I
quarterback
mean,
was.
they were winning 9, 10 games every year. Like they were 8, 9, 10 games. That's what they did. They had Marinovic,
Wait. Now that you brought him up,
Robo.
now that you brought up Todd Marinovich, I wonder how much of that dude Tua Tagovailoa's dad knows about. Because the story of Todd Marinovich and how he became the it quarterback, striking to me how Tua fits into it, which is, yo, dad said, I'm going to be really, really good.
Hmm.
And when you make your kid switch from righty to lefty, and you make it very clear that when we go to the beach, it's not to have fun, it's to train. I was thinking, is Tua going to be playing football in 5 years?
I don't know, man. That's a good question.
I'm not sure that dude's
That's a
having
really
having
good
a lot of
question.
fun, man.
No, they look like they take it very, very serious, and everything they do is football oriented. I mean, I just couldn't do that to my kid. I mean, my kid is very like you and I have discussed how motivated my 6 year old is about everything, and he asks to be trained and stuff like that. But I would never walk up to him and go, you know what, it's time to go train. I don't care how old they are. Like you need to go train. Like they
I
have to want to do it.
Well, I was about to
That
say the best case scenario that I've heard about from a superstar athlete that everybody would know is Bryce Harper. And Bryce's dad is a sports dad. His family is sports oriented, but it was Bryce that was going up to his dad repeatedly going, let's do soft toss. And he's like, are you serious? We just got back from wherever. And he played on like a million travel league teams and be like, nah, we need to go do some soft toss. And his dad would repeatedly be like, are you okay? Are you good? Just throw the ball, dad. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay, Bryce is here for it. And that's what you need, but
Yeah.
not everybody's built that way. And
Yeah, no.
I would venture to say that 1 in 10,000 people is built that way. So it's not any sin or anything like that. And there's a lot of folks that do things because they're good at it, not because they absolutely love to do it. And the things that you usually love to do are not necessarily things that you're good at. It's just things that bring you joy. And I'm not
Right.
necessarily sure that Tua Tagovailoa loves football. And I kind of was circling back to this in what we're talking about, but we're talking about quarterbacks. We're talking about transferring. We're talking about the reasons for which kids might transfer. We need to talk about the reasons for which Kyler Murray might play in the NFL and whom he might play for, because you and I were joshing about where he would go. But since then, Cliff Kingsbury has been giving the head coaching job at Arizona, and everybody's keying on what he said in October, which is, if I was in the NFL, I would take him with the number 1 pick in the draft. So everybody's already concocted a way for him to trade away Josh Rosen to, say, the Giants, who need a quarterback, and then go draft Kyler with the number 1 overall pick. Now, Arizona got way out in front of this and said, there's no way.
Hmm.
I still don't think it's going to happen, but I also think it's not going to happen because Cliff Kingsbury doesn't actually run anything. I think he's a glorified offensive
Yeah.
coordinator.
No, yeah, I think that's kind of where everybody they want him to bring in his system. They want it to try to work for Rosen. Now, here's the deal. Could they draft? And did you see what Will Kane said today?
Nah, man, I don't listen to hacks.
Well, he was on their. I just saw a clip of their first take, and I thought it was pretty interesting. And I
Is this
kind
the
of
same?
bought it.
Is this the same first take where Stephen A. went on about what Kyler can or can't
Yeah,
do?
it was actually that exact segment, and that's where Will Kane actually, you're calling him a hack, but he agrees with you on this.
Is he talking about the
Where
Cowboys?
mm, no, he was talking about the
Okay,
Cardinals.
all right, okay,
Yeah, so
all right.
so he got in there and he said, look, he goes, I wasn't a fan of Kyler, but I'm a Texas Longhorn fan, and I watched him just destroy my Longhorns defense over and over, and I watched what he did to Alabama. To say that he couldn't be the number 1 pick in the draft is absurd. which I kind of agree with. I mean, if you're going to say that just because of a guy's height, that's why you're not a number one draft pick, I don't think you're living in 2019 to where you feel that it's still 2005 or 2010 and you have to be this prototypical. I mean, that's been debunked by what, 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the league right now. So that's stupid to even believe that. And to say Kyler, just because he's an inch and a half shorter than the other guys that are out there doing it, that he can't do it. I mean, that inch and a half isn't that big of a discrepancy to where a guy that runs a 4.3 40, 4.4 40, whatever he goes out there and runs and has an arm and the IQ that he does, that he can't go out there and be really good at the NFL level. It's just stupid. And that's where everybody's getting at. They're like, well, he wouldn't even be a top 10 pick. Will Kane came out and said, if I'm the Cardinals, I'd draft him number one anyways because, one, he fits what they're doing. Two, Kingsbury recruited him to Texas A&M before he left for Texas Tech. Right? Am I right on that? He did, didn't he?
I think so, and I think he wanted him to come out to Tech.
Yeah, and he wanted him to come out to Tech, and he almost did. And so he started recruiting him as a sophomore. So that family is very close. And the understanding of what he's doing, I just think you do it. You draft until you hit. Nobody knows if Rosen's a hit. I don't think Rosen's a hit. I really don't.
All right. I
don't think Josh Rosen's a hit.
Nobody thought Jared Goff was a hit either, and then you got him a quarterback coach that knew what to do with him.
Right, but I think that Murray can come in there and do better in that system than Rosen could.
I think it's too many. I think it's too many moving parts. One,
you could trade Rosen though and get more assets for it. Though.
I doubt it. You'd get draft picks. You wouldn't get assets.
Well, that's what those draft picks turn into assets.
No, but you're gonna get Kyler Murray killed in the meantime because you're not gonna have an offensive line to block for him. By the way, you also still have David Johnson standing next to him, who is your best offensive weapon outside of Christian Kirk. You're just not built for Kyler Murray right now.
And who did Christian Kirk play with in college?
Yeah, and again, if you do
this.
not have an offensive line to block for him, it doesn't matter.
That's where free agency comes in.
I don't think you can. Okay, Brandon, we both agree that offensive line and defensive linemen are the toughest, not only to recruit but to get. Right,
yeah.
so I don't want to go into free agency for somebody's also rans. Not for Kyler Murray.
Not everybody's an also ran when you go. Some guys choose to leave.
And what are you going to give up to get one guy?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I see where you're coming from, and I kind of agree with what you're saying. But I'm also saying that I wouldn't throw out this Kyler Murray not being a part of the Cardinals, just completely throw it out because nobody thought Baker Mayfield was going to be the number one pick in the draft. They thought he was going to fall to number 5 to the Broncos, and he didn't.
I think.
And you see what I'm saying? We just don't know.
I would think that he would have gone to the New York Jets before he would have got to the Denver Broncos, but that's just me.
They already said obviously they have to come out and say that, but
well, they also took a quarterback.
They did take a quarterback, and it sounds like that's what they kind of wanted. Of course, they have to say that after they draft him.
Okay, well, hey, man, like you're saying, where was he going to go?
You're trying to get me riled up right now about the Broncos. Anyways, here's the deal. Is I agree with you, but my point is that I just you can't say that they're not going to draft it. They can't say
all right.
Maybe they do. Maybe they move Rosen for a couple of linemen.
Let's say
because that would be a good move because you could get Rosen for a couple of linemen.
Let's say
somebody
this.
would do that.
Let's say this, right? Let's say first that Kyler Murray enters in the draft like everybody thinks that he will, but he hasn't as of the taping of this podcast. And then
he's gone because Oklahoma was trying to get Jaylen Hurts.
Well,
so we might as well go ahead and give it up.
I'm not saying that I'm giving it. Look, man. I'm
telling the rest of the world, not you. You understand? I'm telling the rest of the world to give it up.
Oh, all right. So let's go from there. And you've said what he does in the combine or whatnot. I don't think that Kyler Murray is gonna go to anybody's pro day. Going to go to anybody's combine.
Yeah,
he's not going to perform for anybody. You're going to draft him or you're not because number one, he's going to play baseball on February 15th, regardless of what goes on Monday afternoon, Monday morning, when the NFL early draft entry deadline is done. He's playing baseball. Now the question becomes, if he gets drafted highly enough, does he quit playing baseball to go play football? But also, the Oakland A's get to keep their draft pick. They don't get to have him in the system, which is going to hurt them. But if football doesn't work out, it ain't like he's going to move to wide receiver, which is another rant that I have. But I still want to stay on this subject just for the time being and say that, look, man, I get that you're saying that they could go draft him at number 1 overall, but the mere fact that he's playing baseball is going to get some folks shook in that organization, because it's not a copycat league. It's a CYA league. It's a cover your rear league. And what you get to say is, hey, we didn't give up the farm to go get a guy who's playing professional baseball. We didn't trade away Josh Rosen for some offensive linemen for a dude we're not even sure might even show up on time and will be fully invested in playing the game of football because he has this other thing on the tape. Look, I fought as an elementary kid through middle school and high school, boxing, right? And one of the things that was told to me repeatedly is, RJ, I don't want to train you to be a pro. And I would be like, am I not good enough to be a pro? No, it's not that. Well, what is it? You have options. You don't have to be a boxer. You can go play football. You can run track. You can go join the debate team. You can go to college and do whatever it is. I want somebody who has made it their life. I want somebody who has decided there is nothing else in life for them to do except to use their hands to go get what they want, go fend for themselves. That is a very dangerous man, right? So, like, I think the reason that you and I are good at what we do is because this is who we are, right? Yeah. I tried not to do it for like 3 years, and I'm here doing it, while I do all this other stuff that I got into. But the point here is, I don't think it's that Kyler Murray can't do both. I think it's that everybody else is spooked about a guy that can. Because if he can, he will. And if he will, are you getting the best out of that guy? Or do you at least get to tell your owner, who is the only fan that matters at the NFL level, because they don't have boosters, they don't have athletic departments, they don't have any of that. Do you get to tell the owner that we're getting everything we possibly can out of this quarterback? No, because Kyler Murray was drafted last June. It's out the door, period. Now,
right, but here, can I interject?
Please.
So what with what you're going for and what you're saying, I agree with. But the caveat to that is, and the devil's advocate, I guess, is basically he could get drafted early and they go ahead and they pay off their. If say he goes up to, he tells the NFL people that he interviews with, because we all know Kyler Murray's going to interview with a lot of these guys, right? Like, we understand that he's going to go and interview with teams.
I'm not even sure that that's going to happen.
Well, he's got to do something to that effect.
I think he'll do a phone call.
Right, but I mean, over the phone, he'll guarantee, hey, look, if you draft me earlier, I'm not going to play baseball right now. And they can go in and say, okay, well, if you're going to do that, we'll pay off the $3.3 million that you owe the A's for not showing up. Kyler gets to keep $1.3 million of it. We'll pay that off, and we'll subtract that from part of your signing bonus. That way you're getting, but he's still going to be making more upfront than he ever would in baseball. I could see that happening.
The money's not the aspect for me. I think the money is already agreed to.
But that plays into it.
I also think that Scott Boras is still going to be doing the talking here.
Yeah, and he's going to want in baseball because that's where he's powerful at.
No, I think he's going to want to get the most money. Because Scott Boras, yeah, he's a super agent in baseball, but that's because that's where the most money is, right? And Scott Boras does not speak baseball as much as he speaks green, which is to say that if he thought he could get Mike Trout more money to be an NFL quarterback, he'd be an NFL agent. He just knows that.
That's fair.
And so going with that thinking, knowing what we know about Kyler and knowing what we know about how difficult this decision is being for him, I think he just wants to know that folks are going to be behind him. And I think the Oakland Athletics have positioned themselves best to demonstrate they're in the Kyler Murray business by going, hey, number one, go play college football. We want you to have that season, and we're going to build it into the contract. And then saying, yes, we fully expect him to go enter his name in the draft, and we're not spooked by it because, there's no shame or disinterest in you being drafted because that's not playing professional football. It is being drafted. I think that what that dude wants is what he got out of Oklahoma, which is to say, we're investing in you. We want you to have fun. We want you to be yourself. Because Oklahoma was the first school which could have said, we don't want you here if you're going to play baseball. And not only did they not say that, they said, go have a ball, son. We'll work it out with Skip Johnson to make sure that not only you get enough practice time at each place, but you're still in position to win the starting job. and they stuck with him. And I think that's the thing, if you're Kevin Murray, if you're Scott Boras, that you want to get communicated to Kyler. Because if you're looking at Kyler as a piece of meat who's going to play quarterback for you, he ain't going to go into the draft and sign. It's just not what he's going to do. I think this kid really does speak to loyalty, because if you're listening to his Heisman Trophy speech, which is a form of Hall of Fame, I guess. But if you're listening, you could hear how much he really loved his mother. And his mother, by the way, was the person in the entire room who could care less about sports, who's texting. His mom was his best friend because she was behind Kyler. Didn't care what he did, how he did it. She was in the Kyler Murray business. And I think that means the most to this dude. And I think this gets me into the part about the wide receiver bit again. If you're looking at him as a product, just keep walking, man. Because who wants to be a product? People want to be family. You know, people want to know that they're going to be taken care of when stuff hits the fan. And by the way, it always hits the fan.
No, I agree. I feel that. I just feel like Kyler. Well, do you feel like he 100% wants to play football over baseball, or am I just reading too much into this?
I think he 100% wants to play both, and he's been told 100% no. So now he's put in the very difficult position of saying, which one do I love more, when he's really always been both. You know, that was the thing that I think, honestly, I was giving this a lot of thought, especially in the way that 2018 turned out for him, and going, Sumlin, why didn't you just let the kid play baseball? Because I honestly believe he was off balance. Yeah. I think that being told you can't do one or the other made him a worse quarterback, because I don't know about you, Brandon, but one of the reasons that I do so much is because it keeps me on balance. It keeps me mentally aware. It keeps me on task. I'm not allowed to wander or get deep into my feelings. And I think I mentioned it on this podcast, but if you watch the videos, you know that I speak quite honestly about depression, and in particular manic depression. And one of the ways that, you know, through therapy and other activities I've learned to cope is, as a kid growing up, I did all things all the time. And my mother would speak to this, in that if RJ's not busy, RJ's not okay. And because I'm busy, I'm operating on all cylinders, and I can do all the things. If you remove things from my plate, I'm off balance, and I'm sluggish, and I'm slow, and I get into deep, dark spaces where I can't function. And I wonder, on a molecular level, if Kyler Murray just has to do both to be good at both, you know, which is counterintuitive to what we might think.
Yeah, I see where you're going with that, but I think that's the scary part about this whole deal. If maybe he could be the greatest two sport athlete since Bo Jackson, even better than Dion, and he could be that guy, but at the same time,
he's not going to get that opportunity.
He's not going to get that opportunity, because in today's world, you are, you know, you basically become a profession and just focus on one singular sport, and that's where, you know, you see all these kids out there training for football. They don't play basketball. It's year round, training for their skill set, training for what they do in football 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, instead of doing what we did when we were kids, and that was doing both. You do 2 and 3 sports, and that's what made some of those athletes great, because they were so diversified and made themselves, you know, they got the agility from playing soccer and basketball. They got their speed from working out in football and running track and stuff like that, where today it's like, I got my speed because I basically worked out 365 days a year, working on my speed and agility in a weight room, in a training facility, to focus on this one sport, football, to play wide receiver or quarterback or running back, what have you. It doesn't matter. But you see what I'm saying? Like, it's a totally different dynamic and world than what we grew up in. But that's kind of changing again, I think. My aunt, who's dealing with all this stuff, I guess it's starting to be told that you need to do multiple sports again, that they've realized that actually works out better for kids in the long run, and than doing this, you know, focusing on one sport deal that they try to do nowadays, where you just play that sport year round. So I hope that's what they go back to, because I think that's way better for kids, because it doesn't burn them out. You see a lot of the drop off when they get older. playing in high school because they've done one sport their whole life. So now they don't want to do anything else because they aren't good at anything else but that sport, but they're burnt out on it, so they just don't want to do it. And that's where the games come in. That's where depression sets in. That's where kids get into trouble and they become lazy. And you know what I'm saying? Like they need to get back to that world.
I believe.
And I just totally went off on a whole different tangent.
No, I'm with you on this because I'm working on a story and a series of videos with Tracking Football where I interviewed the guys at trackingfootball.com. We're doing some really cool stuff where they examine how track and field events translate to football athleticism and have come up with an algorithm to demonstrate that these track traits translate to football on a 1 to 5 scale. And they put together some stats that I thought were just awesome. Like, this dude ran a 10.68 100 meters. He ran a 7.29 55-meter hurdle. He jumped 6'9" in a high jump. He jumped 24/7 in a long jump. And he went 13 feet in the pole vault. I'll give you $100 if you can tell me who that person is.
Okay, so he did all this when?
High school. All of the stats are coming from high school.
What sport did he play?
I'm not telling you.
Oh, I'm going to say Deion Sanders.
Close. It's Bo Jackson.
But that was going to be my other guess.
So, but more to the point, what I'm saying here, and this is the reason why I went with Bo Jackson, because he did play every sport, is an unexamined life is not worth living. And I didn't say that. Socrates did. He also said true knowledge exists in knowing that you know nothing, which is to say, do as much as you can while you can. Push the boundaries. There are no limits except the ones that you put on yourself. And that's one of the reasons why professional sports, I think, is just always going to be its own worst enemy. We've just gotten to the point to where an air raid college football coach is deemed worthy enough to run an NFL franchise when Hal Mummy was running air raid in 1985, and before him, Lavelle Edwards was running it in the early 80s at BYU, and before that, Sid Gilman was running it in the NFL. So, I mean, I hate it because people want to have a built-in excuse for something that won't work, and it's not worth the risk to them because you'll fail. Well, I'm here to tell you, folks, I failed. I'm going to fail again. I'm going to fail better. But the point is, I'm doing this, and I'm here because I tried something. Like, I don't know about you, Brandon, but do you know anybody who's ever covered a sport via YouTube?
I've seen it tried.
Right. And I've seen it tried too. And that person failed, and I was able to learn from that person's mistakes. Right? But I'm here talking about this sport, covering it on YouTube, doing interviews, doing the best I can, creating what I can, and trying to do the best I can with what I have. And I'm bringing that all up to say, I wish Kyler Murray could play both professional football and professional baseball because I think he'd be wondrous at them. But as it is today, the position that he is in, I think he's going to choose football because we already know that he is in the top 0.001% of college football players, which means that he has a very good opportunity to be in the top 1% of NFL players. And we don't really know as much about his major league future because, one, he hasn't played a lot of baseball at the college level, and two,
5 years for arbitration.
Yeah, it's so difficult to get into the show, man. And once you get there, could he even be on the same team? Would they have traded him? Would they have stuck with him for 5 years?
No.
Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot of this is highfalutin speak to just say, sorry, man, you're going to have to go in the first round of the NFL draft.
Yeah, he is. And that's kind of where I've leaned the whole time because, look, I can't remember the lady's name that does NBA for ESPN. She's an insider, and she breaks news all the time for like free agency and stuff.
Ramona Shelburne?
Ramona Shelburne, yeah.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, so
hell of a softball player, by the way.
Yeah, she was. And that's where I was gonna. That was my other hint. I couldn't remember her name, but I knew she played softball.
Stanford.
She gave a stat that was really intriguing to me and said, of all the teams from since 2010, there's been such and such how many first round quarterbacks have been drafted. I think it was 39 to 45% or something like that. I can't remember the exact total, but it was something absurd. made $55 million while they just probably set the bench for the most part. That was the average that the quarterbacks made in that time span from being drafted.
Oh
The
yeah.
average, like, so he has a chance to make absurd money. Not just that, he's going to be known as the two sports star, regardless of whether, because he got drafted in both. So Nike, Adidas, whoever gets a Jordan brand, whoever gets a hold of this guy is going to give him a fat $100 million signing, just like Baker to sign with them as well. So he's going to be making upwards of 300, $400 million by the time his career is over.
Again,
Just in endorsements and everything because of his position at quarterback.
Again, right? I think we all know, and I think Kyler knows what the money is going to be and how huge it is compared to baseball. Even if he's going to get his endorsement deal, period, whether it's baseball or football.
Endorsements were football endorse baseball, big time.
I also think that inherent in this, because I wrote this piece on OUinsider.com, digging into quarterbacks and the money. If you're a bad quarterback, and by bad I mean you spend more time next to the water cooler than, like you mentioned, on the bench than playing on the field, the $55 million average does not necessarily do justice to dudes like Chase Daniel, right? Who didn't make that much money, but made the same amount of money in the same amount of time as Adam Eaton, who's an everyday outfielder for the Nationals, batting over 300. That dude's an all-star, and Chase Daniel is basically just on the team for all intents and purposes.
He's made a bunch of money just sitting there holding the clipboard his whole career. And
Blake Bortles, who's basically damaged goods at this point, could resurrect his career. I just don't see it happening. He's made $40 million, and he's 26. So
4 years, my goodness.
And I think we're agreeing, and we should probably move on because we're destroying the subject.
Yeah, we totally did.
So
sorry guys. So fast forward if you want to get to, if you made it this far, the point to fast forward. But yeah, you get what I'm saying.
All right, let's talk position coaches. We know that Tim Kish is retired. We have some ideas, some very heavy leanings about the guys who are out the door. I don't necessarily know if we want to talk about those things on the podcast, but we can talk about a couple of folks that I think are public in the knowledge that they interviewed or being talked about for the job.
Yeah, we can do.
Rather than just where he is in the search. So, talking about Roy Manning, in that it's the dude that I keyed on because I was looking at the group of which Alex Grinch put together when he went to Washington State, and Roy Manning stood out to me because of what he was able to do with the outside linebackers in particular. And I know that is a point of emphasis in Oklahoma's recruiting for the 2019, 2018, 2017 classes when you're looking at guys like Jalen Redmond, Nick Bonino, John Michael Terry moved out there. We'll see how that continues to go. Mark Jackson, so forth, so on. But Roy Manning was also on the UCLA staff that played against Oklahoma earlier in the season. Also had a number one recruit in Jalen Phillips playing outside linebacker, and they looked pretty good against Oklahoma. And while he's at Washington State, his outside linebackers had 26.5 tackles for loss and 12 sacks by themselves. And he brings a lot of energy. You know that he would hit the ground running with recruiting, and he has an NFL background that I think could benefit Oklahoma and the kids that want to see the next level at that position, particularly as a special teams commando, so he knows what it takes to grind as opposed to be a first-round talent that goes in there. And I think some of the dudes that are on the field now are going to fall into that category, so he can help set them up. And he coached at Michigan, he coached at Cincinnati before getting to Washington State, and now at UCLA where it's outside linebackers and special teams, so maybe he'll be able to do some of that. And because he can coach both sides of the ball as well as every linebacker position, it just made a lot of sense. And then there you go with him kind of showing up on OU's radar.
Yeah, and I mean it's pretty well public knowledge that he came in for an interview, and that seems to have gone well. That's about all I can really say as far as that goes, publicly, obviously. So yeah, Oklahoma seems to have really pinpointed him. They seem to have really pinpointed Zach Spavital, formerly out of the Broken Arrow and Tulsa area, and as a high school coach. The Spavital family is very well known up there in the Tulsa area as far as coaching goes. He was also a linebackers coach and at Texas Tech, but he also GA'd right out of college at the University of Oklahoma back in the early 2000s. Kind of worked under Kel and Kel Gundy and a couple other guys. So that makes sense. He's at Texas State right now as a defensive coordinator. He makes sense. And obviously Brian Odom, former Oklahoma running back, fullback, what have you, out of Ada, Oklahoma, transferred and finished out his college at Southeastern. And he he was so well regarded at Oklahoma as a hard worker that OU kind of brought him along and brought him in as to kind of help them with the strength conditioning staff under Jerry Smith. He went on to Missouri or Arizona, and then went up to Washington State, where he then switched over and became a defensive quality control guy. Before his brother Barry Odom got the job at Missouri to be the head coach, and then he brought Brian down to be the linebacker coach. So him coming in as well would make sense. But I don't know that Oklahoma is actually going to get two linebacker coaches, because we still don't know what's going to happen with Ruffin McNeil. Well, we know, and that's about something I'm teasing now that we're going to have covered tomorrow on OUinsider.com. So I'm about to put all that up tonight.
Tomorrow is Friday, by the way.
Yeah, tomorrow, Friday, being that we will have that stuff up, and some other stuff as far as cornerback coaches that have been interviewed and talked to. So there's a lot of stuff going up on OUinsider.com, and Jaylen Hurts. There's a lot of stuff we didn't talk about with Jaylen Hurts that is about to go up on OUinsider.com Friday, tomorrow, heading into the weekend for you all Oklahoma fans that want to know all those details. We're about to have them all up there. Little tease, but that's things that we really can't do on the podcast and talk about. But there's a lot of movement going on right now. We can say that Calvin Thibodeau is being kept on, and obviously we know that Kerry Cooks is most likely not part. Like, they never came out and publicly said it, but he's interviewed for the North Texas job while down there in San Antonio. And Tim Kish is retired, and obviously Mike Stoops was fired. So there's been a lot of movement on the defensive side of the ball, and there's more to come here in the next probably 3 or 4 days, to be honest with you.
All right, I think that's a good place to end it. I think covered some ground at the end, and if you stuck around,
It's a big recruiting weekend too, by the way.
Well, yeah, we got some official visitors, and Brandon's gonna have notes on those. I'm gonna have notes on those. And Sunday's gonna be a big day because, well, that's always a big day when the officials are over.
I would expect an eyeball or two, maybe.
Hey,
maybe one eyeball. Yeah,
there you go.
Just saying.
There you go.
There's probably one eyeball about to pop up on Sunday. I would guess. I mean, I'm not saying 100%, but I'm pretty positive it's gonna happen. So
there you go. All right, that's gonna do it for this episode of Young and Drum. I am RJ Young. That is Brandon Drum. We will see y'all next time. Deuces.
Yep, deuces.